Heaven's Gate. This infamous UFO cult believed that the Earth was about to be wiped clean, and the only way to survive was to leave it. In late March 1997, as Hale-Bopp reached its closest distance to Earth in a haunting act of collective departure from the material world, Applewhite and his 38 devout followers consumed a deadly cocktail of phenobarbital and vodka. Their intention was to shed their earthly bodies, board an alien spacecraft, and journey through Heaven's Gate to achieve a perceived superior form of existence. The group was established in 1974 by Bonnie Nettles and Marshall Applewhite, who were referred to as T and Doe within the movement. The pair first encountered each other in 1972 and embarked on a spiritual journey claiming to be the two witnesses mentioned in Revelation. By the mid-1970s, they had amassed several hundred followers. By 1976, the movement, comprising a core group of a few dozen members, adopted a monastic lifestyle and ceased recruitment. This is dark, but now I'm curious. Have you stumbled upon a story about a UFO cult that sent chills down your spine and left your palms sweating? Share your eeriest encounter in the comments. Heaven's Gate's theology is perceived as a fusion of Christian millenarianism, a New Age philosophy, and ufology, leading to its recognition as a UFO religion. The group held a firm belief that members could morph into immortal extraterrestrial beings by renouncing their human nature, and that they would ascend to a higher existence termed as the next level, or the evolutionary level above human. After Nettles succumbed to cancer in 1985, the group reinterpreted their belief in ascension. Initially, they thought they would ascend to heaven alive via a UFO, but later they began to view the body as merely a vessel for the soul and believed their consciousness would transition to next level bodies upon passing. On March 26, 1997, the San Diego County Sheriff's Department found the bodies of the 39 active members of the group, including Applewhite, in a house in the San Diego suburb of Rancho Santa Fe. Just prior to the mass departure, the group's website was updated with a message indicating that the comet marked the end of Heaven's Gate's journey on Earth and they were ready to leave with T's crew. However, the name Heaven's Gate was only used in the final years of the group's existence. Previously, they were known as Human Individual Metamorphosis and Total Overcomers Anonymous. Despite the horrific tragedy that occurred with the Heaven's Gate cult, it continues to intrigue and fascinate many people even years later. The beliefs and actions of this group offer a glimpse into the complexities of human behavior and our search for meaning and purpose in life. One of the most striking aspects of the Heaven's Gate cult is their unwavering faith in their leader, Marshall Applewhite. He was able to convince his followers that their wiping out from existence was the only way to reach a higher level of existence and achieve salvation. This blind faith serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of giving total control over one's life to another person. The constant bombardment of doomsday predictions and conspiracy theories in mainstream media has made people more susceptible to believing in extreme ideas. The fear of the unknown and the desire for answers often lead individuals to seek solace in these groups, providing them with a sense of belonging and purpose. However, the danger lies in the potential for manipulation and exploitation by leaders of those groups. The blind loyalty and willingness to believe can be used to control and manipulate followers for personal gain. This is why it's crucial to approach such groups with caution and critical thinking. Next on our list, the Aetherius Society. Founded in 1954 by George King, this group believes in advanced extraterrestrial intelligences operating on spiritual principles who govern the Earth. They consider themselves as cooperators with these cosmic beings to bring about positive change. The unique spiritual group, founded by a man who claimed to communicate with the extraterrestrial beings whom he called the Cosmic Masters. Followers of this faith believe that by aligning with these Cosmic Masters, they can help humanity overcome earthly challenges and ascend to a new age. Their belief system is a complex mix of theosophy, New Age notions, millenarian beliefs, and elements of UFO mythology. This society highly values selflessness, community service, respect for nature, spiritual healing, and fitness. Their gatherings resemble traditional church services. Although the Aetherius Society is generally non-controversial, some have questioned its esoteric and millenarian aspects. Despite its followers spanning the globe, the society remains quite small, with memberships mainly concentrated in the UK, Southern California, and the US and New Zealand. Their theology, deeply influenced by theosophy, fuses narratives of UFOs, yoga, and elements from different world religions, especially Hinduism, Buddhism, and Christianity. They reject religious exclusivity, maintaining that no one religion, nation, or race holds a monopoly on divine favor. The ultimate goal of this religion is to prevent global destruction by promoting harmony between humans and extraterrestrial masters, and and by harnessing spiritual energy to raise the planet's spiritual level. They believe that prayer, often associated by spiritual energy batteries, often assisted by spiritual energy batteries designed to hold healing psychic energy, can prevent or mitigate various disasters. The Society's founder claimed to have telepathic conversations with Aetherius, placing him in the esteemed company of other Venus-sourced cosmic masters like Buddha and Jesus. Next up on our list is Christ Brotherhood. This group's intense devotion to otherworldly powers and alleged plans to summon extraterrestrial beings have made them a group of interest to the government. The unique UFO religion born out of Orange, California, it all started back in 1956 when a man named Wallace C. Halsey received otherworldly messages in his dreams. These prophetic warnings from alien beings detailed the looming end of the world, but with a silver lining. A chosen few of humanity would be saved. Halsey established Christ Brotherhood, Inc. as a non-profit religious educational organization, its mission enlightening mankind. Remarkably, it attracted members from a staggering 52 different religious denominations. In a compelling turn of events, Halsey led his followers to Cache Valley, Utah. In 1961, here they started building a unique compound replete with underground weapon shelters in the mountains near Smithfield City. Why this location, you ask? Well, Joseph Smith, the founding prophet of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, had identified the Rocky Mountains as a sanctuary. But in 1963, the coherence of the Brotherhood was tested when Halsey mysteriously disappeared during a flight from Utah to Nevada. Despite exhaustive searches and even attempts to call upon extraterrestrial assistance, it took 13 years for a lost deer hunter to inadvertently discover the plane wreckage and the remains of Halsey and pilot Harry Cleveland Ross Jr. In memory of Halsey, his teachings to the Brotherhood were compiled into a volume published in 1965, Cosmic End Time Secrets. This book encapsulates the prophetic messages from alien life forms to Halsey, but this was not the end of the Christ Brotherhood. In fact, it continued to attract followers, with more than 100 members in 1979 and a peak of around 500 in the early 1980s. The teachings of the Christ Brotherhood continue to fascinate people even today, with many still searching for answers about their beliefs and practices. One notable aspect of the Brotherhood is their strong belief in the existence of extraterrestrial beings and their role in humanity's future. They also have a unique interpretation of the Bible, incorporating elements of ufology and ancient astronaut theories. On to the next, the Raëlian movement. Often termed as the most significant UFO cult, boasts a global following of around 80,000 enthusiasts, a tale that spins around the message, a belief that all life forms, all races and species, are the brainchild of the extraterrestrial assistants named the Elohim. These entities, they claim, used DNA to breathe life into the previously barren Earth. They advocate for world peace, sharing democracy, and nonviolence. Particularly in focus today is the French sector of the movement, Mouvement Raëlien Français, or the MRF, which has faced its fair share of backlash and criticism. In fact, within France, it's frequently labeled as a harmful cult. But here's where the story gets interesting. Despite the criticism and the anti-cult sentiment, the movement has managed to survive and even thrive since its inception in the early 70s. Their leader, the self-proclaimed Messiah Raël, was ousted from France in 2002 and hasn't returned since. The tale of Raël's exile, the French Raëlians' resilience in the face of anti-cult biases, and the recent strategy to dissolve their formal organization for a more clandestine operation provide a captivating peek into the influence of the anti-cult movement on targeted groups within France. It's evident that the Raëlian movement has faced its fair share of challenges, but their unwavering belief in the message and their desire to spread it globally is a testament to their resilience. Whether you believe in extraterrestrial origins or not, you can't deny the influence this movement has on popular culture and the ongoing conversation about the existence of alien life. And lastly, let's peek into the mysterious world of Scientology and its extraordinary cosmic narrative. We introduce you to Xenu, also called Zimu, a figure of great importance in Scientology's secret advanced technology, a revered and esoteric doctrine. As per this doctrine, Xenu is depicted as an alien overlord of the Galactic Confederacy 75 million years ago. He transported billions of his subjects to Earth, then known as Tigiak, using DC-8-like spacecraft, lined them up around volcanoes, and annihilated them with hydrogen bombs. Scientology scriptures profess that the immortal spirits of these aliens, known as thetans, latch onto humans, inflicting spiritual damage. This revered event within Scientology, known as Incident 2, and its associated traumatic memories are referred to as the Wall of Fire or R6 implant, and this cosmic tale is part of a broader narrative on extraterrestrial civilizations and alien interference in earthly affairs, referred to as space opera by Scientology's founder, L. Ron Hubbard. The church has strenuously evaded public references to Xenu and has made considerable efforts to keep the story confidential, including legal action citing copyright and trade secrecy. Despite these measures, details about Xenu have leaked to the public domain via court documents and internet-distributed copies of Hubbard's notes. Scholars have examined and analyzed Hubbard's writings and their role within Scientology, their connection to science fiction, UFO religions, Gnosticism, and creation myths. The Xenu story has gained significant attention and scrutiny from mainstream media outlets and critics of Scientology in recent years. The church's reluctance to openly discuss or acknowledge this part of their doctrine has led many to question its validity and raise concerns about the organization's practices. Some may have even gone as far as labeling Scientology as a cult due to its secretive nature and controversial beliefs.
How about we start off today with a UFO cult, known as the Superior Universal Alignment, also known as, wait for it, Lineamiento Universal Superior. It was founded by Valentina de Andrade in 1981. She claimed to have received messages from extraterrestrials warning her of destruction. If, however, she shared their warnings with others, she and her followers would be saved. Similar to the Raëlians, SUA believes that Jesus was actually an extraterrestrial messenger. They also believe that males born after 1981 are evil and that their lives should end as payment to the superior beings. In 1989, the Amazonian town of Altamira received a sudden increase in reports of missing boys. Not having clear clues about the disappearances, the authorities couldn't do anything about it. By 1993, the reports rose to 19 missing young folks with no trace or clue as to find them. By that time, the bodies of 5 of the missing were found dead with signs of torment and castration, and it was determined that these killings were connected to the medical guild because the castration seemed to be made by a medical expert. But other than that, nobody knew anything and there was no evidence. So the authorities opened an investigation and began to connect the dots between the killings and those who were missing. The bodies of the boys were identified as homeless ones who had worked in the streets, but most of the missing ones had been reported by their families. This fact unsettled and confused the detectives in charge of the investigation, and they were like, okay, both cases can't be related, because who's so depraved? Well, all their efforts weren't really doing much until one day. One boy came to them and was like, hey, I escaped from my captors, let me tell you everything. The brutality described seemed as if it was ripped from the pages of a horror novel. Some of the atrocities that he suffered that I can say included the castration, obviously, and mutilation, everything else I can't say. He also explained that other victims were impaled to death and their organs were extracted and sold to the black market. Some unofficial versions state that the captors even ate the organs, but there's no official confirmation on that front. Brazilian society was shocked when the victim identified those in charge, since a lot of the folks identified were respected members of society. We're talking 2 doctors, a wealthy businessman, a police officer, and Valentina de Andrade. The leader of the group managed to escape from justice when she presented a very convincing alibi, stating that she wasn't in town when the killings took place. She was exonerated, and now she's happily guiding her increasing flock of followers who simply ignore these crimes. Great. Good leader. Moving on to the Nuwaubian Nation, which was a black supremacist cult, but instead of enacting a race war, its leader, Dwight York, mostly used it to amass a stable of young body-selling service type SLAVES. So York began founding several black Muslim groups back in New York in 1967 and changed his teachings and names of his groups many times, incorporating concepts from Judaism, Christianity, UFO religions, New Age, and many esoteric beliefs. Essentially whatever pieces of other religions that fit his quote-unquote vision, he used, building quite the mosaic. In the late 1980s, he abandoned the black Muslim theology of his movement in favor of Kemetism and UFO religion. In 1991, he took his community to settle in upstate New York and then near to Eatontown, the county seat of Putnam County in Georgia. His followers built an ancient Egypt-themed compound called Tamare and changed their name to the United Nuwaubian Nation of Moors. York published around 450 booklets under numerous pseudonyms, by the way. During the late 1990s, he styled himself a Messiah founder prophet type of his own movement, sometimes claiming divine status or extraterrestrial origin when appearing on his Savior's Day celebrations at Tamare. Are you still following me? Swell, because we're far from done. By the year 2000, the United Nuwaubian Nation of Moors had around 500 followers. Granted, they did draw thousands of visitors for Savior's Day ceremonies. Now, the followers kind of declined steeply after York was convicted of numerous counts of bad touching young people, racketeering, and financial reporting violations, and sentenced to 135 years in federal prison in April of 2004. The compound was sold under government forfeiture and demolished, and the Southern Poverty Law Center officially designated this group as a hate group. The group has taken numerous names though throughout its history, including, let's see if I can get this right, Ansaru Allah Community, Holy Tabernacle Ministries, Yamasee Native American Moors of the Creek Nation, which was also used in Georgia when York claimed indigenous ancestry via Egyptian migration and intermarriage with the ancient Olmec, and we've already talked about Nuwaubian Nation of Moors. By the way, York is still in prison for, bad things, but his followers have continued popping up over the years, mostly after they do crimes. Great. As of 2010, some factions of the subculture in the United States appeared to continue to support York, portraying his conviction as a conspiracy by the white power structure. Malik Zulu Shabazz, chairman of the New Black Panther Party and York's lawyer, described him as a great leader of our people and a victim of an open conspiracy by our enemy. So, make of that what you will. Next up we have Providence, which is officially known as Christian Gospel Mission, CGM, Jesus Morning Star, or JMS. Geez, a lot of these things have a lot of names. It's a Christian new religious movement founded by Jung Myung-suk in 1980 and headquartered in Wolmyongdong, South Korea. I swear I looked up how to pronounce it, folks. It's been widely referenced by international media as a cult, and you're about to find out why. So in the 1970s, this leader was a member of the Unification Church, or UC, which he based his teaching on. When he founded his own group in the 80s, it criticized Christian teachings and beliefs and maintained that their leader was the second coming of Jesus Christ, and was later expelled from the Methodists. The name was changed to the International Christian Association in the mid-1980s, and a rift occurred in the group in 1986 when the vice president of Providence attempted to act on the scandal surrounding the group. But he was shut out of the organizational system, and Jung consolidated all the power around himself. In October of 1999 was when the organization officially became Christian Gospel Mission. So what were the lessons of this cult? Alrighty, everybody, buckle in. One lesson implies that those who do not meet the leader will not go to heaven. Another is that anybody who's going to betray the leader, you're committing a grave crime. During the instruction of the advanced level of the 30 lessons, it is taught that your leader is the Messiah, proven through the numerological interpretation of prophecy dates and times in the book of Daniel. Providence preaches the advent of the complete Testament era, and allegorizes the relationship between God and man to that between the groom and bride, or two lovers. It also teaches that the original sin was caused by Eve's intercourse with the fallen angel, who turned into Satan. And Providence teaches that this can be redeemed by having intercourse with your leader. Oh yeah, forgot that little thing. The leader of all this was found to have forced female followers to have coitus with them as a religious behavior meant to save their souls in the Korean court of law. Former members have stated or testified that young and attractive women were presented to their leader as gifts, with whom he coercively engaged in icky acts, which was explained to them as a purification rite. So in April of 2009, our crazy leader was convicted of harming someone in the R-word way by the Supreme Court of Korea and sentenced to only 10 years of imprisonment. He was released in February of 2018, and following his release from prison, the Korea Post reported that the Providence faith movement had reached more than 70 countries. Before I get sick, we're moving on to the Nation of Yahweh. In 1978, Hulan Mitchell Jr. left the Nation of Islam because it just wasn't extreme enough for him. He rechristened himself Yahweh ben Yahweh and founded the Nation of Yahweh. Try saying that 5 times fast. The group is classified as another black supremacist cult by the Southern Poverty Law Center and as an official cult by the Miami Herald. Swell. The SPLC has criticized the beliefs of the Nation of Yahweh as racist, stating that the group believes that black people are the true race and that whites hold wicked powers. They've apparently calmed down a bit in recent years, but the belief still seems to hold. The SPLC also claims that the group believes that Yahweh ben Yahweh had a mission to vanquish whites, and that it held views similar to those of the Christian identity movement, which believes that Aryans are the true bad guys and non-whites are devils. It got to the point where Yahweh proved so popular that he got his own day in Miami, but then he started commanding his followers to kill for him, went to prison for conspiracy to commit killings, and died shortly after his release. He still has a handful of followers in Miami though, although their activity seems to be mostly limited to Yahweh's the best, and posting memes about bad things and homophobic scourges on their Facebook page. The group is reportedly spread throughout the US and no longer concentrated in one location. More recently, the group appeared in the news back in 2012 after Michael the Black Man, real name Maurice Woodside, a member of the group who is now a conservative activist, was invited to speak at a rally for Rick Santorum's presidential campaign, during which he said that Democrats were similar to Yahtzees. Woodside has since become a vocal supporter of Donald Trump, but continues to defend Yahweh ben Yahweh and the nation's beliefs. Alrighty everybody, we're going to end today with the 12 tribes, formerly known as the Vine Christian Community Church, the Northeast Kingdom Community Church, the Messianic Communities, and the Community Apostolic Order. They're a new religious movement founded by Gene Spriggs that sprang out of the Jesus movement in 1972 in Chattanooga, Tennessee. The group calls itself an attempt to recreate the first century church as it is described in the Book of Acts. The group's origins in Chattanooga led to planted churches in surrounded areas, and in the late 70s, the group began a community in Island Pond, Vermont. As the relationship with the Chattanooga community deteriorated, the group eventually left Tennessee, and Vermont became the main area. So the 12 tribes' beliefs resemble those of Christian fundamentalism, the Hebrew Roots movement, Messianic Judaism, and the Sacred Name movement. However, the group believes that all other denominations are fallen, and it therefore refuses to align itself with any denomination or movement. The group has very strict courtship rules, and their views on raising young humans have been a source of controversy. The group supports itself through the operation of several businesses, most of which revolve around agriculture, as well as cafes, restaurants, all using unpaid and often young labor. Oh yeah, young people have been noted to play a central role in the group's beliefs, especially the sons. The 12 tribes believe that it is the parents' responsibility to properly enforce a consequence for sin, so as to allow young people to maintain the state of a clean conscience. So over time, future generations will be better equipped to deal with or overcome the faults of their predecessors. This will apparently enable future generations of the group to hopefully be the 144,000 of Revelation 7. If it wasn't already obvious, folks here are homeschooled, and within the group, young people are apprenticed to elders by the age of to be trained in crafts and specialized labor. The group acknowledges using corporal punishment with a reed-like rod, like a balloon stick, across the rear end, and many former members say punishments can include severe repetitions to the point of fluid release or collapse, and are often repeated daily. The group has obviously ignited controversy and garnered unfavorable attention regarding their practices and accusations of harm. They've been criticized for their beliefs and practices, including for their supremacist views towards Black and Jewish people outside of their membership. The group's teachings have been characterized as racist, misogynistic, and homophobic. NX members report excessive corporal punishment, failure to stop harm, and exploitation of followers for labor. Some governments and advocacy groups have labeled the group a cult, and well, I can see why. Ever heard of Bohemian Grove? A secretive organization of people that control the world? Well, what do you know? It exists, and many of its members are powerful world leaders and titans of industry. It appears to primarily exist as a place where the rich and powerful go to misbehave. That is, according to the Washington Post. Technically speaking, Bohemian Grove is a restricted 2,700-acre campground at 2601 Bohemian Avenue in Monte Rio, California, in the States, belonging to a private San Francisco-based gentlemen's club known as the Bohemian Club. In mid-July of every year, they host a more than 2-week encampment of some of the most prominent men in the world. Their all-male membership includes artists and musicians, as well as many prominent business leaders, government officials, former US presidents, senior media executives, people of power. You'll notice that I'm not saying any specific names right now, and that's because I don't feel like getting sued or disappearing. Thanks. Members can invite guests for either the Spring Jinx in June or the main July encampments, or they can schedule private day use events when things aren't being used for club-wide purposes, and that's when you're allowed to bring spouses, family, and friends. But if you're a gal or you're underage, gotta get out of there by 9 or 10 o'clock at night, because that's when things get fun, apparently. After 40 years of membership, that's when a guy earns the old guard status, gives you reserved seating at the daily talks and other perks. Okay, I think there's a couple of names I can talk about without getting in trouble. Pray for me. Former US President Herbert Hoover was inducted into the Old Guard on March 4th of 1953, and the club motto is "Weaving spiders come not here," which implies that outside concerns and business deals are left outside. But a lot of business deals actually occur here. Important political and business deals have been developed, notably a Manhattan Project planning meeting that took there in September of 1942, subsequently leading to the atomic explosive device. Those attending this meeting? Ernest Lawrence, J. Robert Oppenheimer, the S1 executive committee heads, presidents of Harvard, Yale, Princeton, along with representatives of Standard Oil and General Electric and military officials. At the time, Oppenheimer was not an S1 member, but he hosted the meeting. Grove members take particular pride in this event, and they tell the story pretty often, so I think I was safe to talk about that. Other behavior at the campground has led to numerous claims, with President Richard Nixon's comments from May 13th of 71 calling it the most, insert F-word slur for gay here, goddamn thing you could ever imagine. I swear finding a way to say curse words without getting dinged by YouTube rules is like writing a crossword puzzle. To be a fly on the wall of any of those meetings. Sounds like a cult to me. Okay. Here's a cult I know you've seen posters for. Shen. Technically, it's a show put on by a religious group that is arguably a cult called the Falun Gong. This was founded by a man named Li Hongzhi, who registered the group with the Chinese government in 92. Fun fact, in 1989, after the bad protests, the Chinese Communist Party established a registry of social organizations to try and solve things. Li has been open about his beliefs that evolution is fraudulent, that people of different races will be separated in heaven, and that homosexuality and promiscuity are unnatural. Great, I'm in trouble. He's mentioned that he believes that aliens were attempting to control humans by making us dependent on modern science. Okay. A San Francisco man named Samuel Luo has claimed his mother and stepfather refused essential medical treatment because of the teachings, saying that sickness is based in karma. Also, apparently it's God's plan to eliminate the gay population. Well, I'm still here. So, Shen Yun was kicked out of China and have some heavy anti-communist sentiments, to say the least. Essentially, they're a church that is putting all of their money into a dance show with very heavy anti-communism and anti-China sentiments. They don't hide that they're heavily critical of the government of China. In between depictions of ancient dances or stories told through dance and singing, there are skits depicting, get this, organ harvesting, kidnapping, and suppression of religious liberty by plainclothes secret police. That's a heck of a show. A memo from the Embassy of the People's Republic of China has quite the opinion on the performances. Allow me to quote, "This organization preaches heretical fallacies that are anti-humanity and anti-science, and exercises extreme mental manipulation on followers. It is a cult that seriously harms the society and violates human rights, and is a cancer in the body of the modern and civilized society." According to one attendee over the last couple of years, at one point during the show, an amazing singer came on stage for a solo performance, and then the lyrics of the songs were translated and written on a screen, and they included things like, oh boy, atheism and evolution are deadly ideas, and modern trends destroy what makes us human. That wasn't just something that was said once, it was a recurring theme. This group also concludes the show with a tidal wave crashing into mainland China as a result of their anti-religious ways, in typical end of days fashion. This company has 8 total groups that tour for 6 months each year, performing in over 130 cities in North America, Europe, Asia, Australia, and Latin America. Ergo, trying to control the world through their views. Okay, here's an out there idea. Rasputin's followers. Hear me out for a minute, would ya? Grigory Rasputin, the legendary Russian mystic and healer, developed a devoted following during his time in St. Petersburg, particularly into the early 20th century. While it might be a stretch to label it a cult in the traditional sense, he did attract a group of followers who revered him as a holy man with supernatural powers. His rise to prominence began when he arrived in St. Petersburg in the early 1900s, claiming to possess healing abilities and a direct connection to God. His charismatic personality and rumored ability to cure Alexei, the hemophiliac son of the Tsar Nicholas II and Empress Alexandra, gained him favor within the Russian imperial family, mostly Alexandria, but still, that was plenty for the time. His influence then extended beyond the royal court, as he attracted followers among the Russian nobility, clergy, and common people. A lot of folks believed that he possessed mystical powers, including the ability to predict the future and influence political decisions. Sounds like a cult taking over something to me. Some folks even credited him with supernatural abilities such as mind control and hypnotism. Once again, we're checking off all the boxes. Rasputin's followers formed a kind of informal cult around him, gathering at his home, seeking his guidance on matters of faith, healing, and personal advice. They saw him as a holy man, capable of performing miracles and offering spiritual enlightenment. Granted, his reputation wasn't without controversy. His unorthodox behavior, including his heavy drinking, promiscuity, and rumored involvement in dark and depraved activities, led to a lot of speculation and condemning from both the Russian Orthodox Church and a lot of Russian society. The man liked to have coitus, and he liked to have it with his followers. Now, despite the criticism and opposition he faced, his hold over the imperial family remained strong for quite some time, because Empress Alexandra relied on him for advice and support. Granted, his influence ultimately became a liability for the monarchy, contributing to growing resentment and discontent amongst the Russian people. So, what happened? Well, in December of 1916, a group of nobles, alarmed by his influence and concerned about the state of the monarchy, were like, let's assassinate him. How'd they do it? Well, they poisoned him, they fired at him, and they drowned him. I don't have enough time to go into detail, but rest assured, if it takes that much to kill somebody, they're not human like you or I. While his followers might not fit the traditional definition of a cult, their unwavering devotion to him and belief in his supernatural powers played a significant role in shaping his legacy as one of the most mysterious and controversial figures in Russian history. Also, his control over the monarchy. Come on, Look, I had to say Scientology today or else everybody would be asking me about it. This is a set of beliefs and practices invented by the American author L. Ron Hubbard, who developed a set of ideas that he called Dianetics. He presented it as a form of therapy. By 1954, he founded the Church of Scientology, and current estimates put the number of Scientologists, or followers, at just under 40,000 worldwide. That's a lot of folks. Scientology beliefs include reincarnation, and that traumatic events cause problematic engrams in the mind. But hey, it can be fixed. It's a process called auditing. But you gotta pay a fee each time. Eventually, somebody's gonna be like, okay, you're good. It takes about 7 years. Then you're given the status of clear. After you're deemed clear, then you can take part in further activities called operating Thetan levels, which, you guessed it, more money. The texts are kept secret from most followers and revealed only after you've given hundreds of thousands of dollars to the organization. If you don't have ridiculous amounts of money to burn, don't worry. Go on WikiLeaks. They're there. From soon after their formation, these groups have generated considerable opposition and controversy. And that's because, well, there's been some illegalness. So, by 1967, Hubbard was like, ooh, I'm gonna form a new elite group, the Sea Organization, or Sea Org. And I'm only gonna pick the most committed members of the church to join. By 1981, we get David Miscavige, who had been one of Hubbard's closest aides. He rose to prominence, so when Hubbard passed away, Miscavige was like, I'm in charge now. And he's still in charge to this day. Look, that's 1986 to 2024. You do the math, it's been a minute. If you want to talk about the illegal stuff, well, in the 1970s, all of these followers engaged in a program of criminal infiltration of the US government, resulting in several executives of the organization being convicted and imprisoned for multiple offenses by a US federal court. Well, going back to the former leader, Hubbard, he was convicted in absentia of fraud by a French court in 1978 and sentenced to 4 years in prison. In 1992, a court in Canada convicted the Scientology organization in Toronto of spying on law enforcement and government agencies, and also criminal breach of trust. The Church of Scientology was convicted of fraud by a French court in 2009, a judgment which was upheld by the Supreme Court of Cessation in 2013. The Church of Scientology has been described by government inquiries, international parliamentary bodies, scholars, law lords, and numerous superior court judgments as both a dangerous cult and a manipulative profit-making business. I could talk about them for hours. We could be here all day. And just how awful they are. So let me know in the comments if you'd want that. How about we end today with a doozy that I think still controls a lot of people, but they don't know it, NXIVM. Founder Keith Raniere originally promoted this as a self-help organization. There was workshops, there was classes on empowerment. Heck yes, it had 18,000 followers at its peak. I think that was around 2017 when members came forward to expose the really bad practices of a secret society within the group. Women were recruited under the false pretense that they were joining a sisterhood, but it ended up being a coitus cult. There was a pyramid scheme. So Keith, who members would call Vanguard, he was at the top, followed by masters who recruited other women to join the secretive group. And at the bottom were the newest recruits, who were referred to as, well, the lowest of the low. A former member explained that in order to be admitted to the secret club, you gotta hand over some dirt, some nudie photos and other compromising documents that people could use to blackmail you with if you ever tell anybody about it. She was also told that another part of the initiation was getting a small tattoo. But when the day arrived, well, she got branded instead. No little tattoo, a brand. Where was it? Right above the pelvic area. Each woman was instructed to say, and I quote, "Master, please brand me, it would be an honor." Icky. So fast forward to 2020, Keith was tried in court where more than a dozen women came forward with statements regarding his psychological and other icky misdoings. He was convicted of many crimes, racketeering, bad videos. I could go on. He was sentenced to life in prison, but in a court filing, his lawyers wrote, yeah, he's not sorry for his choices. Look, if you're handing over that much blackmail, I'm pretty sure this cult still exists to this day, but people just don't want to come forward.
Number 5. The Cali Meteor. Thousands of years ago, a meteor hit Estonia with the force of a Hiroshima bomb. The meteor fragmented, creating 9 craters, which are now called the Cali Crater Field. One of these craters was over 100 meters and became a site of holy worship for some of the locals. Surrounding the water-filled crater is a large stone wall from the late Bronze Age, and the wall is stronger than any of the other similar structures in the surrounding area that were made at the time, hinting to scientists and historians the importance of the building. A large, concentrated amount of animal remains were found at the Cali crater and led anthropologists to believe that they were used as ritualistic sacrifices. The thing is, the bones were found thousands of years after the wall was built, meaning the crater was a consistent site of worship for thousands of years. There are several legends surrounding the lake, especially in Finnish mythology. Here's a quick synopsis. Quote, Louis, the evil wizard, steals the sun and fire from people, causing total darkness. Ukko, the god of the sky, orders a new sun to be made from a spark. The Virgin of the air starts to make a new sun, but the spark drops from the sky and hits the ground. The spark goes to an Aluan, or Kaleven lake, and causes its water to rise. Finnish heroes see the ball of fire falling somewhere behind the Neva River. The heroes head in that direction to seek fire, and they finally gather flames from a forest fire. End quote. The legend mentions a spark of sun, referring to the meteor, which when landed caused a huge impact and a forest fire. I mean, it's like dropping an actual bomb. The impact was insane. The crater has no noted reports of being an active worship site as of today, but such a widespread belief must have been passed down. I highly doubt the beliefs would have just ended there. Number 4. The Pythagoreans. Pythagoreanism originated in 600 BC, based on the beliefs and teachings that Pythagoras and his followers held. Pythagoras established the first Pythagorean community in the ancient Greek colony of Croton. The beliefs spread quickly throughout the land, and the death of Pythagoras created even more popularity as people created their own traditions within the belief system. The beliefs influenced Plato, and through him, they influenced Western philosophy. Most of the surviving information on Pythagoras came from Aristotle and the philosophers of the Peripatetic school. The beliefs spread widely, and some say that they have survived as part of the Bacchic cults and Orphism. The beliefs included science and religion. Pythagoras was very well known in ancient times for his mathematical achievement, the Pythagorean theorem. I wish he wasn't as well known because I hated that class. He was also noted for his discovery that music had mathematic foundations. He's been credited as the philosopher who first discovered music intervals and is said to have invented the monochord. As I said, a lot of the information we now have on Pythagoras came from Aristotle and the Peripatetic school. The 5th century BCE information do not have any elements of supernatural entities, but by 4th century BCE, legends and fables were introduced into the belief system. Pythagoras founded the first community in Croton during 5th century BCE. He described it as a secret society, and he also gained political influence. The military and economy in Croton soon became very strong. In the early years, the Pythagorean sects were closed societies, where new members were chosen by existing ones, based on intelligence and discipline. Then they went under a 5-year initiation period where they would listen to teachings in complete silence. Then they would complete a test, and if they passed, they would be welcomed to the inner circle. But they were able to leave whenever they wanted. Soon, it became customary for family members to become Pythagoreans, as it developed into a philosophical tradition that influenced everyday life and swore members to secrecy. Within his teachings, Pythagoras emphasized moderation, vegetarianism, respect for elders and the state, and believed in a monogamous family structure. Boring! They believed the soul of humans was buried in the body, and the highest reward a human could attain was the soul joining the gods, meaning that they escaped reincarnation. They believed the soul was buried in the body as punishment, but that the soul could be purified, so they did a lot of soul cleansing rituals. The list of beliefs honestly go on and on. They include things like harmony, music, geometry, arithmetic, numbers, and cosmology. The disputes regarding Pythagoras' teachings began shortly after his death, which was caused by an arson attack. The disagreements led to 2 separate Pythagorean traditions, acousmatikoi and mathematikoi. The mathematikoi recognized the religious undertones of Pythagoreanism and studied it as part of their practice, but they focused more on the science and research part of Pythagoreanism. Their scientific pursuits were largely mathematical, but they did also conduct research in fields that Pythagoras had in his lifetime. The acousmatikoi believed humans had to act in inappropriate ways. They refused to recognize the advancements that the mathematikoi were making in mathematical and scientific research, which were, as I said, in line with Pythagoras' beliefs. They also challenged his original teachings, including harmony, justice, ritual purity, and morals. The tension between the 2 groups only grew as their individual beliefs grew further and further apart over the years. Number 3. The snake cult of Glycon. Glycon was an ancient snake god who had a large and influential cult in the Roman Empire during the 2nd century. The cult is thought to have originated in Macedonia, where other snake cults, much like Glycon, had existed for centuries. Macedonians believed snakes had magical powers and fertility. Initially, the cult did not worship the spirit of the snake or an abstract idea of a godly snake. Instead, they worshipped an actual, physically tangible snake that resembled the god. The creator of this cult, Alexander, foretold that there would be a reincarnation of Asclepius. It's said that Alexander procured an egg, and when the people gathered to see it hatch, Alexander cut the goose egg open and revealed the prophetic snake god inside. The small snake grew to the size of a man with the features of a human on its face, including long blonde hair. Some say that the figure depicted at this stage was actually just a puppet, or a trained snake with a puppet head. Creepy. The focus of worship in the cult was fertility. Barren women would bring offerings to Glycon in the hopes of becoming pregnant. By 160 AD, the cult's teachings and methods began to spread. An inscription from that era reads, "Glycon, protect us from the plague cold." The same year, the government of Asia declared that he was the protector of Glycon's oracle. The governor also married Alexander's daughter. Many sought prophecies from Alexander, yearning to learn of what their future holds and even how they might perish. The cult's beliefs were spread through lower social classes, and over time, even high-class citizens and officials were die-hard believers of Glycon's healing, and of the prophecies Alexander told. The support and belief of the emperors, paired with the healing powers of serpents throughout history, lured many people into the cult. There was no shortage of converts and believers. Roman coins were even made in honor of Glycon, which likely happened way after Alexander's lifetime. For at least 100 years after Alexander's passing, a new Glycon cult formed and began to spread their influence. Statues and other archaeological finds have been located in Tomi, now known as Constata, displaying just how present the cult was throughout history in the large city. The Glycon cult is still referred to this day. The statue that was found in Constata, Romania is on display at the Constata History and Archaeology Museum. The statue is even commemorated on a postage stamp from 1974 and on a 10,000 lei banknote from 1994. And to this day, people declare themselves as devotees of Glycon. Talk about a long-lasting influence. Number 2, the Eleusinian Mysteries. The Eleusinian Mysteries were initiations that were held every year for the cult of Demeter and Persephone. They took place at the Pan-Hellenic sanctuary of Ulysses in ancient Greece. They're considered the most famous of the secret ancient Greek religious sites. Their basis was an old agrarian cult, and there's evidence that they were derived from the religious practices of the Mycenaean period. The mysteries referred to Hades' abduction of Demeter's daughter, Persephone, and was told in 3 phases: descent, search, and ascent. Originally, the cult of Demeter was private, hidden under the Telesterion. Some of the practices are seemingly influenced by other religious practices, specifically those from the Mycenaean period. The group would hold a feast. At the beginning, priests would fill 2 special vessels and then pour them out, one to the east and one to the west. Then, the people would look upwards and downwards while chanting, "Reign and conceive." Then, a child was initiated into the group from the divine fire. Honestly, I tried to decode this part for a while, but I had very little success, I'm sorry. The climax of the celebration represented the force of the new life. When the mysteries started, immortality was not a part of the beliefs, but as time went on, they believed that it would grant them a better fate in the underworld. Eventually, the mysteries were spread wide, and people from all over flocked to participate. Eventually, the mysteries were controlled by 2 families, which led to a huge number of initiates. The only requirements were that you had never directly caused someone's death and that you were able to speak Greek. Men, women, and slaves were all welcome. The mysteries came to an end around 170 AD, after it was ransacked by the Samaritans. Eventually, the building decayed and the religion died down, but it is still referred to often in art and literature, and many interesting theories regarding present-day mysteries have been mentioned. Number 1, the cult of sacrifice. The cult of sacrifice is a pretty interesting one, and it actually differs a lot from the others because the cult did not worship any specific entity or object of power. The cult of sacrifice originated thousands of years ago, but its presence was not constant. It mainly occurred during great times of stress, when its beliefs and practices would be most useful. Records of the cult are poorly recalled and only exist in written form, so the origin's location is unknown, but it is speculated that it began in the eastern hemisphere of Raniere because most written evidence was found there. As I mentioned earlier, the cult did not have an object or entity that they worshipped. Instead, they believed in sacrificing elements of their own life for the good of others. The cult was based on the idea of charity and self-sacrifice for the benefit of others, in particular, those who need it most. The cult took these ideals to an absolute extreme though. They would starve and fast, not because it was a religious practice, but because they'd given all of their food to others who were perceived as having less. They were minimalists, not because they wanted to be, but because they would give all of their money and material possessions away to those who were perceived as having less. Essentially, they would damage themselves to the point of illness illness and death just in the name of sacrifice and in the hope of helping. This was most likely the reason that the cult had such sporadic activity throughout centuries, because they were pretty extreme and a lot of people didn't survive. To join the cult, the only thing necessary was the blessing of an existing cult member, like any cult member. So yeah, it was able to spread through small communities pretty quickly. I'm kind of stuck on how strange the towns that this cult was prominent in probably looked. Like, I'm imagining people sleeping on the streets, freezing, overheating, and starving, while there's just like a massive hoard of food that they've placed in the town center for the less fortunate. But like, no one will touch the food, and all of their houses are empty because they're the only ones living there. Crazy. The cult is essentially extinct, because mostly everyone who was a member ended up dying from their loyal devotion. However, the cult came to its official end on August 8th, 2021, when the last member died. The cult officially died because, if you remember, the only way to join the cult is to be blessed by an existing member. So, the faith is officially extinguished. I mean, their ideology is good, but extremism is never good. Middle ground, that's the sweet spot.
Kicking off at number 5, Children of the Corn, 1984.
He wants you too, Malachi.
Which is perhaps everyone's first horror brush with the concept of a strange fanatical cult of demonic, corn-zealous children out in the deep rural fields of Nebraska, which is oddly specific, but Children of the Corn is also iconic for a reason. See, the thing is though, despite some terrible acting and questionable special effects, this film worked at the time and still works to this day because of its concept. It's like Lord of the Flies meets The Omen. What if the children of a small rural town were corrupted by a demonic overlord? Children of the Corn is the answer to that question. Directed by Fritz Kirsch and written by George Goldsmith, the movie itself is based on the short story of the same name by Stephen King, and admittedly, it takes many liberties with King's narrative structure. But, and this is a big but, it's hard not to produce a cult classic 80s slasher when you have the basic recipe of the real core of this film. Creepy kids in wide-brimmed hats wielding scythes and staring out from behind the rows of corn, seeking more adults to slay to sacrifice to their aptly Kingian bloodthirsty deity. In fact, it's hard not to go wrong, especially when you have the incredibly unnerving performance from the then child actor John Franklin as the genuinely unsettling Isaac Kroner. Oh, and of course a direct reference to He Who Walks Behind the Rose, aka Randall Flagg himself. Like many of Stephen King's fictional works, Children of the Corn is a cautionary tale on the dangers of delusion and organised corruption, and that's why it's so damn good. Next up at number 4, The Ritual, 2017. And whilst that scene was absolutely hilarious in an otherwise horrifying movie, it doesn't water down the fact that the bizarre Jotun cult in 2017's The Ritual is one of the most original and downright disconcerting depictions of a fanatical band of sacrificial followers in recent times. And all it took was an immortal, mythological Scandinavian troll god and all of his faithful withered followers to set the scene. If you haven't seen 2017's The Ritual, then there may be a few spoilers already lurking in this list, but as far as modern horror movies go, The Ritual sets itself apart with its wholehearted originality, but more importantly, it's a resounding formula of misdirection and confusion, because nothing says horror than uttering the phrase, "What the hell is going on and who are these creepy folks nailing people to trees?" Directed by David Bruckner with a screenplay from Joe Barton, 2017's The Ritual is a tale based on the novel of the same name written by Adam Neville. And although the movie takes a few liberties in terms of narrative structure, the visual representation of an ancient forest in northern Sweden lends itself incredibly well to the mythological mystery that it permeates. You see, it works because we don't really need to know how or why this ancient forest is populated by a bunch of Jotun worshipping fanatics. We just need to get out of said forest and survive. And that makes for some terrifying horror viewing. Coming in at number 3, Eyes Wide Shut, 1999.
May I have the password, please?
Which is perhaps the most traditional depiction of horror movie cults on this list, because there's nothing quite as visually iconic as a dimly lit room and a bunch of cultists dressed in flowing robes and porcelain masks, right? And for many people, Eyes Wide Shut is perhaps the quintessential cultish cautionary tale that very aptly spells out the fact that you should always be careful what you wish for, particularly if you're Tom Cruise. And it's also important to note that this film has caused so many conspiracy theories since its release in 1999 that it's pretty much considered to be a cult in its own right. But I'll leave that one down to your own interpretation. Written and directed by the legendary Stanley Kubrick in his last ever film before his death, Eyes Wide Shut tells the tale of a curious doctor who slowly finds himself roped in with a mass secret society that has a thing or two for theatrics after discovering that him and his wife are going through a few crises of fidelity, to say the least. The thing is, there is so much to this movie that you can take the cult that comes with it in many different fashions. Depending on how you see the inner workings of the background of this movie, it may just be a bizarre tale of adultery and lust, but sometimes, if you look deeper, switching the lens as we can often do with Kubrick's cinematic works, you'll see suspicion in every background actor and in every out of place frame. You'll see moments of deception, human sacrifice, ritualistic symbology. This film really is that good, and whilst the proverbial cult isn't as explicit as in other films, Eyes Wide Shut is perhaps the starkest depiction of a very human conspiracy. Swinging in at our number 2 spot, The Void, 2016. And it was only a matter of time before a Lovecraftian tentacle-worshipping sect of hooded cosmic void priests showed up, right? After all, isn't that what you came here for? Now, for the most part, 2016's The Void is an incredibly underrated horror movie, but as far as cults go, it's perhaps one of modern horror cinema's very best, and it does that with only a few handful of scenes, all of which are equally terrifying and equally awesome, may I add. If what you want from a cultist depiction of horror cinema is an ominous cabal of hooded figures holding torches on the horizon with the intention of summoning forth the end of all things through tentacled deities, dark skies and vistas of black pyramid empires, then look no further, because 2016's The Void is exactly that. Written and directed by Steven Kostanski and Jeremy Gillespie, we've covered 2016's The Void quite a few times on this channel, so we won't harp on too much about its artistic merit and rightful place as one of the best horror movies of this decade. But for those of you that haven't seen it, The Void is pretty straightforward in its execution. Cosmic void cult takes over a small town. No one, including the audience, realizes that survivors get trapped in the local hospital, slowly getting picked apart as a metaphorical and literal box of tentacled horrors gets unleashed. If you came for cults, The Void has them in spades. Give it a watch. You won't be disappointed. And finally, coming in at our number 1 spot, Suspiria, 1977. And whilst technically not a cult in the conventional sense, as it's a coven of mystical and mortal witches wrapped up in a supernatural conspiracy, there's no denying that perhaps the most perfect unravelling of an occult mystery in horror cinema comes within the beautifully vivid and equally horrifying events of Dario Argento's giallo masterpiece, Suspiria. Written and directed by Dario Argento and partly based on Thomas de Quincey's 1845 essay Suspiria de Profundis, this film is a mystery wrapped up in an enigma, stacked with symbology from the off, as well as also being one of the most visually pleasing horror movies of all time. But more importantly, it defined an entire age of horror fans and warned them to always check the credentials of the establishment the next time you sign up for ballet lessons. There are so many twists and turns in this film that I feel I won't be spoiling it by telling you there's a cult somehow involved, because although part of the experience is in the slow unraveling of the events of Suspiria, from the off you know that something is up with the Tanz Dance Academy, and that's pretty much established in the film's opening moments. What sets this particular strange establishment apart, though, is the pure ancestry that Suspiria alludes to. How far deep is this coven rooted? How vast is its network? And for many of us, these questions only serve to permeate more questions, and it's perhaps the main reason why Dario Argento's 1977 classic is still so important to horror cinema to this day. A coven cult. Of course it's number 1.
Coming in at number 5, Rosemary's Baby. Roman Polanski's masterpiece, Rosemary's Baby, set the standard for many cultist horror movies, particularly in the way it reveals the cult, using a steady and slow build and paranoia, confusing us as to what exactly is even happening. This 1968 horror stars Mia Farrow and chronicles the story of a pregnant woman who suspects that an evil cult wants to take her baby for use in their rituals. However, it is quickly revealed that her husband has made a deal with the devil for success in his acting career, and the price is offering up his wife as a surrogate mother for something truly evil. Satan's son. That's right, the cult uses Rosemary as a sacrificial lamb for Satan's grand return through his own offspring, and it is truly terrifying. The general sense of unease throughout the movie is why Rosemary's Baby is an absolute classic. and perhaps one of the scarier movies in the horror genre. The horrors depicted on and off the screen aided in the rumour that the film was actually cursed by the cult and summoned demons, with many incidents occurring off-screen to the cast and crew, including the slaying of Roman Polanski's wife, Sharon Tate, at the hands of the Manson family. Coming in at number 4, VHS 2 Safe Haven. Safe Haven is one of 4 sections in the 2013 anthology found footage sequel VHS 2, with the segment being directed by Timo Tjahjanto and Gareth Hugh Evans, and being the best section in the entirety of the movie. The plot follows a news crew composed of 4 members, who infiltrate an Indonesian cult in the hopes of shooting a documentary about their mysterious activities. Inside the building they find the walls adorned in bizarre symbols, school children in classrooms, and women dressed in white garments. One of the crew, Malik, then overhears that his fiancée Lena is pregnant with another crew member's child, Adam. Things then descend into total madness. The deeper the crew go inside the building, with Lena being abducted by several women, with the cult hunting down the crew members for sacrificial reasons. Now, with only 29 minutes to play with, Evans and Tjahjanto don't hold back, not even for a second, with the segment being insanely action-packed and gore-filled from start to finish. Not to mention it builds to an insane, gore-soaked climax that will shock the audience. Cult are successful in their demon summoning, with the beast making its grand appearance towards the final moments of the movie, and it does not disappoint. Coming in at number 3, we have Children of the Corn. Children in horror movies are already creepy, but put them in a cult composed solely of children, then you have a recipe for absolutely terrifying scares. Children of the Corn, based on the book of the same name by Stephen King, is a supernatural folk horror starring Linda Hamilton and Peter Horton, and is set in a fictitious rural town of Gatlin, Nebraska. The film tells the story of a malevolent entity referred to as He Who Walks Behind the Rose, which entices the town's children to ritually murder all the town's adults and a couple driving across the country to ensure a successful corn harvest. As the couple arrive in the small, seemingly abandoned town, they discover the congregation of children led by a girl named Rachel, with them performing a cultural birthday ritual for Amos by drinking his blood from a pentagram-shaped cut on his body. Amos has turned 19, therefore is considered old enough for his passing, joining their god in the cornfield. Now, while the movie as a whole was a little disappointing, it does deliver on the horrors of cults. Not to mention there were 7 sequels, with the first being far superior. The cult movie in turn gained a cult following, with it being a hit among movie lovers. Coming in at number 2, we have Hereditary. One of 2 Ari Aster movies on our list, Hereditary was a surprise horror movie, with the reveal of its cult being kept a secret for much of the movie, making it incredibly unexpected when it begins to unfold. Released in 2018, Hereditary is Ari Aster's directorial debut, with it starring Toni Collette and Alex Wolff as a family haunted by a mysterious presence after the death of their secretive grandmother. However, what begins as a sober family drama very quickly descends into a crazy supernatural horror. What begins as a slow burn quickly catapults into a disturbing horror after an incident involving the family's son and daughter, leaving viewers covering their mouths. As a result of the incident, the mother, Annie, is forced to turn to a support group member, Jones, for support, learning ways she can contact the realm of the supernatural. However, this has devastating consequences, with her awakening something that should never have been awoken. Viewers very quickly learn that a demon-worshipping cult are the true causes of the family's misery and pain. Worse still, Ari Aster plants Easter eggs throughout the movie as a way of warning us of things to come. However, saying that, most of us may have missed these subliminal messages, but what I can say is, the wall-crawling demon was revealed long before the last 30 minutes of the movie, with the cult being there all along, watching the family and waiting for their moment. The cult in Hereditary are worshippers of Paimon, one of Lucifer's most obedient devotees, who rules 200 legions of angels, and is connected to the Tree of Death, hence why the treehouse in Hereditary is so important. The summoning of Paimon is gradual throughout the movie, but when he finally arrives and seeks solace in the body of one of the characters, well, it's enough to send shivers down anyone's spine. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Midsommar. There are a few things more terrifying than a cult in horror movies. A group of people devoted to a dark high power who will do absolutely anything to appease the deity. No movie displays this as effectively as Ari Aster's Midsommar. Released in 2019, Midsommar is a folk horror film starring my queen, Florence Pugh, and follows a group of friends who travel to Sweden for a festival that occurs once every 90 years, only to find themselves in the clutches of a pagan cult. Now, unlike Ari Aster's Hereditary, Midsommar lays out its intention intentions from the very start of the movie. The movie kicks off with Danny discovering the death of both her sister and parents, with the incident putting a strain on Danny's relationship with her already distant boyfriend Christian. Not long after, she learns that Christian has planned a trip to Sweden with his friends to attend a midsummer celebration at an ancestral commune, so the group packs up and heads out. Things very quickly descend into madness, with the group arriving and being met by a large group of white cult members in a very peculiar white outfit, with Danny realizing that something isn't quite right here. However, her concerns are proven correct when 2 commune elders die by senicide by leaping from a cliff top. When the male elder survives the fall, the cult mimics his wails of agony and crushes his skull with a mallet. Yeah, things aren't fun in Sweden right now. Now, without ruining much more for those who haven't watched it yet, the cult does what is necessary to summon the dark higher power that they worship, with the American tourist being used as a sacrifice for the demon. Now, more interesting still, while this movie isn't entirely based on a real cult, director Ari Aster does describe it as a stew of sorts. I quote, "We're drawing from actual Swedish traditions. We're drawing from Swedish folklore. We're drawing from Norse mythology." All in all, Midsummer successfully draws on the disturbing conventions of cultist horror to generate a sense of dread and unease, making it my favorite folk horror movie and cult horror movie of all time.
Number 5, The Brethren. Do you feel like the modern world has got you down, got you running around, feeling overwhelmed? Perhaps you need a break from it all and you want to get away. I want to go back to a simpler time. Well then perhaps The Brethren is the movement you've been looking for. Founded by Jim T. Roberts, the movement seeks to shed all of the convenience and accommodations of modern living, with its members instead choosing to live as vagrants, drifting on the edge of society, away from the prying eye of the modern world. Their leader believes that in order to be guaranteed a spot in heaven, one must purify themselves. And to the Brethren, this means purifying themselves of just about every facet of modern living. As part of their renouncement of all modern living, Brethren must forsake all of their family, friends, their jobs, their livelihoods, all in favor of their new brothers. You aren't allowed to partake in any material goods of any kind. Sew your own clothing and eat what you can scavenge. This particularly grisly habit is what gave the cult its enduring nickname of garbage eaters for their tendency to dumpster dive. You're not even allowed to laugh, celebrate, or play, as all celebrations must be saved for the return of the Savior at the end of the world. Although giving those conditions, I'm not sure what you'd have to laugh about. It goes as far too as members being barred from receiving treatment or medicine, even for common curable illnesses. Because members are forced to cut themselves off from their families, oftentimes members disappear without their family members ever even getting to know what happened. As such, groups have sprung up to try and reconnect Brethren to their families and hopefully get them a dinner that didn't come out of a dumpster. Why not toss a subscribe our way and join our group here? Our teachings are scary videos every day, and the only thing you have to give us is a subscribe, and if you're feeling really generous, maybe a like too. Let's keep going. Number 4, Happy Science. Happy Science, formerly known as the Institute for Research in Human Happiness, is a Japanese New Age religion that's sort of a loot bag for as many religious concepts as you can think of. In Happy Science, all gods that have been worshipped throughout history across various religions were actually all the same god, named El Cantare, roughly translating to the singer. The group's founder, Ryoho Okawa, just happens to be the incarnation of all these holy deities manifested as one man. He also claims to have the energies of various celebrities inside him, including Freddie Mercury and former US presidents. The group preaches happiness, obviously. Following the group's mantra, in order to obtain happiness, one must practice the principles of happiness known as the fourfold path: love that gives, wisdom, self-reflection, and progress. Now, Happy Science isn't just some fringe group in a tent in the backwoods. Rough estimates suggest that the group pulls inwards of $45 million a year. Sounds like there's some kind of profit happening here. That's a little pun for you. Happy Science has a full-on media division, producing several animated and live-action films, and publishing books numbering close to the thousands, mostly being transcriptions of Okawa's lectures about happiness, spirituality, and occasionally aliens, as a major part of the group's belief revolve around UFOs, aliens, and other cosmic entities. The group is fairly widespread, boasting temples across the world in various continents. The group's statistics claim that there are 11 million members worldwide, although more conservative estimates put it around 30,000 worldwide. Regardless, Happy Science is something that's clearly making a lot of people happy. Number 3, Raëlism. Raëlism is the teaching that humanity was birthed by a hyper-advanced race of aliens called the Elohim, who genetically engineered us as their children. Our most famous religious leaders over the years were Elohim human hybrids, whose wondrous abilities and powers were mislabeled as prophets. It's said that by 2035, if Raëlism's followers have achieved the tenets correctly and fulfilled the movement's teaching by spreading its message and building an embassy to welcome its 39 prophets, the group rose to prominence in the 1970s when its leader, Claude Varian, who called himself Rayo, claims he had an experience with a UFO where a spacecraft flying overhead was full of beings who told him about humanity's future and past and handed him a Bible and told him it was his mission to build that embassy. Now all of this sounds like pretty standard cult stuff, worshipping aliens who are secret progenitors, but where things get pretty interesting and worthy of note is that around 2002, a company called Clonaid, with direct ties to Raëlism, claimed to have done the impossible and cloned a baby girl, appropriately named Eve. Immediately, it spurned all kind of controversy, led to several investigations, discussions about the ethics and morality of the situation. But despite all this, no actual evidence of the clone baby ever came up. Eve isn't the only alleged baby birthed this way through Clonaid, with several claims of Clonaid brand clones being produced since the original story in 2002, all with dubious claims, including controversial rapper Kid Buu, who claims to have been born there. So either Eve is still hiding somewhere, or maybe it was a bit of an exaggeration. Regardless, Clonaid charges up to $200,000 for their services, which might seem a bit expensive, but hey, you're getting a great deal on a clone. You're gonna make your money back on that. So if anyone's got a piggy bank just weighing them down, please send me a message and then get back to me and introduce me to you and your clone. Number 2, the Church of Bible Understanding. Hey, real quick for me, what's your favorite Seinfeld episode? Yeah, I probably could have guessed it was the comeback or the contest, and those are both great answers. But what about the checks, where George gets involved with that group of carpet cleaners who end up trying to recruit for a cult, and he's all mad they want his boss, but they don't want him? That's the kind of shenanigan that could only happen to Costanza. Turns out that episode was based on a real group called the Church of Bible Understanding, although at the time they were going by Christian Brothers Carpet Cleaners, no doubt where the idea came from. This undertaking was one of the group's many noble business ventures, including a used van business and a New York chain of used antique stores. Like most cults, the group was led by a charismatic figurehead, one Stuart Trail, who maintained to his followers that only he was capable of understanding the Word of God and understanding how to annoy George Costanza. Their leader was expelled from the Pentecostal church he worshipped at in the early 70s, and after his expulsion, refused to give up the dream and formed his own church, promising a communal lifestyle of salvation. And if reports from former members are to be believed, hard work for below minimum wage. Members were isolated from their friends, families, and communities and encouraged to devote themselves wholly to the church. Besides a less than flattering appearance on Seinfeld, the group most recently made headlines after an orphanage they built in Haiti had burned to the ground, after several claims that orphanages the group had been producing in Haiti had been extremely substandard, shoddy, overcrowded, and dirty. The leader, Stuart Trail, passed away in 2018. Current estimates suggested the group has dwindled down from thousands of members in its heyday to just dozens now. And there's no word if Larry David was ever a member or associated. Number 1, the Nuwaubian Nation. Dwight York had a dream. Like many Americans, he believed in simple things, like amassing an army to help him fight Satan amongst the stars. Let me back that up for you just a little bit and introduce you to the Nuwaubian Nation, or the United Nuwaubian Nation of Moors. Adding just a twist of Christianity, African rituals, and a heavy dose of Egyptian mythology mixed with aliens, Dwight York had a perfect recipe for a wild cult story. The nation believed that they needed to prepare themselves for an inevitable duel of the fates among the stars, and that the 144,000 chosen ones would accompany Dwight into outer space for the fate of the galaxy, zooming away on a flying city to Orion to fight Satan. Now, I have no comment about any of that. Maybe it was the cult of personality, maybe it was the promise that you could potentially get involved in a Star War, but this was a surprisingly popular movement around rural Georgia, where York built up a massive compound that looked a bit like a pavilion out of your favorite Egypt-themed amusement park, and bringing in members in droves. As the numbers grew, the mythology grew, incorporating cloning, racial theory, anti-government conspiracy, and a whole lot more. But the dreams of the Starfarers would be cut short when an investigation in 2002 revealed a horrifying truth that their leader Dwight York was involved in a massive human trafficking operation said to have been comprised of as many of 1,000 people. On May 8, 2002, the Sheriff's Department of Georgia, with the aid of the FBI, shut the entire operation down. York was arrested and sentenced to a life sentence where he's still serving out his 135 years. One Georgia sheriff involved, Sheriff Sills, described the trafficking operation as the best kept secret in Georgia I'd seen in my 47 years as a police officer. The compound was seized and swiftly destroyed. Despite all this though, there are still members out there.
Number 5 on this list is Happy Science. Kind of a fun name that they have there for sure, but maybe not the funnest of cults. Ranker says if you're looking for a mashup of world religions, New Age, hokum, far-right nationalism, and infrastructure spending, then Japanese cult Happy Science is for you. It was founded in 1986 by Ryoho Okawa, a former salaryman who was enraptured by a group called the Godlight Association. He soon formed his own cult of personality called Science of Happiness and changed its name to Happy Science a few years later. Okawa believes he is the human incarnation of a supreme being called El Kanter who combines Christ, Buddha, Muhammad, and every other prophetic deity to create a 9-dimensional heaven with him at the head. He's also created a massively complex mythology of New Age nonsense while simultaneously founding a political wing called the Happiness Realization Party. Here's where the strangeness goes into overdrive though. As his party advocates a vicious Japanese nationalism devoted to denying historical cruelties, advocating conflict with China and North Korea, and rebuilding Japan's infrastructure. The group claims to have 12 million members around the world, has a multimedia arm, and enjoys tax-exempt status in the US. So basically, if it was up to this group, Japan would be invading China and North Korea and probably well on its way to starting World War III. So yeah, definitely not one that you want to be a part of because that could obviously get very bad very quickly. Not to mention you need to worship this dude who believes that he's the human incarnation of all these cool people. I mean, if he actually is the human reincarnation of all of those people, then that's freaking awesome, but come on guys, I think the likelihood that this dude is Jesus as well as Buddha is pretty low. Number 4 on this list is the Brethren. Yeah, so joining this cult really would just be the worst, guys. You just need to give up so much to do it. Ranker says, also known as Body of Christ and Garbage Eaters, the Brethren are an apocalyptic offshoot of the 70s Jesus movement, eschewing worldly possessions and earthly pleasures to purify themselves for the coming end of the world. Brethren members essentially live as vagrants doing odd jobs to survive, eating trash, avoiding bathing and medical treatment, and giving whatever money they do make to the group. They also forbid dancing and laughing until the return of Jesus, bar members from communicating with family, and forbid contact between binary genders. Group founder Jim Roberts passed in December 2015, leaving the future of the secretive cult unclear. You literally need to give up everything in your entire life to get ready for when Jesus returns. I just don't get this one, guys. Like, maybe it's because I'm not part of this cult, but I guess it isn't clear to me why Jesus would be angry that you have earthly possessions. Like, what does he have against you having the occasional knickknack, you know? Also, there's the whole thing where you literally need to eat garbage. I don't think that they're joking about that, guys. Like, you will be eating scraps if you join this cult. Never having a warm meal again, that's about as terrifying as it can get. Number 3 on this list is the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. You guys might be familiar with this one right now as it's currently very popular. Netflix just released a documentary about this cult, so if you want a more in-depth summary of what went down, definitely go check that out. Ranker says that this cult was an offshoot of Mormonism that's constantly in the news for unsavory reasons. FLDS openly embraces polygamy, which the mainstream LDS outlawed a century ago. The group has anywhere from 6,000 to 10,000 members in rural Utah and Arizona, with the group having almost total control of 2 small, linked border towns in 2 states. While Mormon splinter groups had been around long before, the FLDS was incorporated in 1991 by a group of men who had been excommunicated by the church. They went through a range of leaders who all declared themselves prophets until being taken over by Rulon Jeffs in 2002. He passed shortly thereafter and his son Warren took over. It was under Warren Jeffs that the FLDS practices of child marriage, bigamy, incest, racism, abandonment of teenage boys all became public knowledge. Jeffs was sent to prison in 2007 but continues to be the de facto head of the church while his successors squabble for power. This cult certainly isn't as powerful as it once was, and you have to imagine that as time goes on and more people are educated on what this cult did in the past, that will continue on a downward trajectory. But for now, they still aren't totally finished, and if you wanted to, then you could join this group. Absolutely do not do that though, because these people get up to some very weird and often illegal things. Like the leader was literally sent to jail and is still there rotting away. I would not want to get myself into a situation where I'm anywhere close to the people that support that guy. Number 2 on this list is the Nuwaubian Nation. This one is absolutely nuts, guys, so strap in. Ranker says, formerly known as the United Nuwaubian Nation of Moors, this is a cult of personality based around founder Dwight York. Combining Christianity, ancient Egyptian iconography, African rituals, and a belief that aliens are coming, the nation believes that 144,000 chosen people will be taken away in a flying city, spirited to Orion to prepare for the final fight against Satan. Shockingly, York's mishmash of New Age concepts, black power militancy, and ancient Egyptian religion caught on in both the hip-hop community and in rural Georgia, where York built a massive compound made with donated funds. York's mythology grew, incorporating cloning, racial theory, cosmology, anti-government conspiracies, and linguistics. Even as the cult grew, York was under investigation, and he was finally detained in 2002 for running a massive human trafficking ring comprising as many as 1,000 individuals. He was sent to prison for life, and his compound was seized and demolished. The group still exists, though in much smaller numbers. If we just ignore all of the human rights violations for a second, which we shouldn't by the way, but let's just do it anyways for one moment, then at the best possible case scenario, you join this cult and then dedicate your life preparing for a battle with Satan that you may not ever have, because not only is that crazy, but you might not even be in the 140,000 people who gets picked to have said battle with Satan. Like, this just doesn't make any sense at all, guys. Then we add back on all of those human rights violations and all the other stuff that York was sent to jail for, and you get one sick and twisted cocktail that is this cult. Number 1 on this list is Church Universal and Triumphant. Yet another cult of personality in New Age clothes, the CUT was founded in 1975 as an offshoot of a different movement, Summit Lighthouse. Founder Elizabeth Clare Prophet pitched herself and her husband as messengers of the Ascended Masters, a set of spiritually awakened ancient beings central to the Theosophy belief system. They also threw in elements of Christian Science, the I Am movement, and Mormon-style doomsday prepping. The prophets grew wealthy enough to buy large spreads in the Santa Monica Mountains and Montana, while members drove themselves into debt building fallout shelters and paying huge sums of money to reserve a spot in the post-nuclear conflict society. The church was also accused of making illicit straw purchases and of using sleep deprivation against members who attempted to leave. In ill health, the prophet retired in 1999 and passed 10 years later. Since then, the church has gone through legal problems and succession squabbles, but members still meet on a regular basis. So yeah, just join this cult if you want to potentially get tortured from sleep deprivation. Oh, and while we're torturing you, we're also gonna take all your money and invest it into some underground bunker that you'll probably never use. If that doesn't sound like an excellent use of time and money to you, which it probably shouldn't, then I really wouldn't recommend joining this cult.